Welcome to the GovReport podcast. Our special guest today is Ron Hughes, Deputy Director for EDD and Project Director for EDDNext.
Thanks for taking the time to chat with our audience. Really appreciate your time.
No problem, Bill. Look forward to talking to you. I love talking about EDDNext.
Well, so we had our panel discussion last week hosted by TechCA, and it was a great turnout and a really great discussion. Before we get into the project, though, I would like to talk about you just a little bit, your background. You're well known in the community, but maybe not all of our audience members know you and your history with the state of California. Can you just talk for a minute about your background with the state?
Sure. Yeah. So I spent 22 years working in IT in the state of California. The last project I did before I retired, before I separated from the state, was Y2K. I was a director of Y2K testing. I finished that. I basically separated from the state, went into the private sector, formed a data center design and consulting company, did that for 12 years. In 2012, I came back and was appointed the director of the state's data centers. Did that for a couple of years, then was the chief deputy state CEO under Carlos, and then retired. And moved to Reno, like a lot of state employees. Decided we were too far away from the grandkids, so we moved back to California, bought a ranch in Volcano, basically raised cattle and sheep for 7 years. And then I was really looking for something to come back and do, and looking at a number of IT projects in the state that I could potentially, help. And I really liked the EDDNext opportunity because, we provide a benefit to the citizens. So I ended up talking to our director, Nancy, and came back at first a couple of days a week. I think the first couple of weeks I probably worked 12 or 13 days, realized that I couldn't do this part-time. It's just too large of a project. And so I actually reinstated, came back as a state employee. Really happy. I love what I'm doing. I love the people I get to work with. It's been a real good opportunity.
Great. Thank you for that. Well, welcome back to state service. Thank you for your public service. So jumping into the project, before we get to the actual details of the project, maybe we could set the stage just a little bit. I mean, there's been some historic challenges with the department related to the pandemic and other things I think that has been covered pretty widely, but just to not skip over it, what are some of the specific challenges that the department has in terms of serving this population of folks here in California?
Sure. So EDDNext is really the genesis of EDDNext is really the lessons learned during the pandemic. When we went from 58,000 claims a week to 1 million claims a week in 1 week, it really revealed the challenges with the legacy technology. I mean, we just weren't set up to scale to that extent. And so just going through one at a time, people couldn't get logged on. Again, we have an older solution as our claims intake portal. People couldn't get logged on. So they called. We had a 2,000% increase in calls in 1 week. We couldn't answer that number of calls. We didn't have the technology in place to do that. Then we didn't do a great job of communicating because, again, we'd never been through anything like this, and we didn't have the tools in place to effectively communicate with the public. And then our legacy claims management system, again, it's 40 years old, it's mainframe based. It couldn't scale to that extent either. So we had the perfect storm. We overwhelmed all of our technology systems. And so that's been the genesis for EDDNext. So We've done a couple things. Everybody thinks of EDDNext as one big monolithic, work stream, but it's really not. It's 7 different projects. And so we address them one at a time. We prioritize the projects that would have the biggest impact on the public. So to give you an example, we fixed the problems with the claims intake portal. We introduced a Salesforce-based shared customer portal. We've had over 30 million Californians use it since we rolled it out. So that's been incredibly successful. Then we realized the problem with the contact center. We needed to introduce some new technology. We recently procured AWS Connect as our contact center solution. We're in the process of cutting all of the contact centers over to AWS Connect. That'll be a multi-year project, but we will have all of disability insurance cut over by the end of the year. So we fixed the problems we're in the process of fixing the problems with contact center. Communication-wise, we bought a bunch of social media tools. We formed a customer experience group that looks at everything from a customer-centric point of view. So we're fixing the challenges with communicating with the public. We're effectively using social media to communicate the changes at EDD to the public. Then lastly, it's a large project that everybody thinks of when they think of EDDNext, we're procuring a new integrated claims management solution. That's a very, very large IT project. But again, we want to be able to respond to program changes in a matter of months, not years. We want to be able to respond to program changes and have it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars instead of tens of millions of dollars. So it's going to be a much more flexible system, much easier to respond to program changes that we frankly get every year. So that's kind of the background of EDDNext.
Thanks, Ron. So I know that you're not able to talk specifics about the ICMS per the conversation last week, it's an active procurement. So I won't ask you any details about that. But I was wondering if you could sort of zoom out a little bit in terms of the project or the series of projects that they are with EDDNext. What's the scope? How many years? What's the sort of total budget? Just give us a sense of the size of all of this EDDNext.
Sure. It's a 5-year project. It's officially $1.258 billion. Now, obviously, there's 7 different work streams, so that's split among the 7 work streams. It includes all the state employee, the staff costs as well. We've got 185 state employees working on this project. And those are all temporary positions. In theory, at the end of the project, we'll obviously scale that back down. But yeah, it's a multi-year and very very costly project.
So, in terms of the overall timeline, where are you now? Are you into it for a year or 2 years, or where do you stand in the 5-year process?
So we're 2 years into it. We've completed all the major procurements except ICMS. One thing I didn't talk about was we just recently procured a document management solution. So, for example, people don't realize that at EDD, we deal with 15 to 20 million paper documents a year. So those all have to be scanned and routed to the proper location. We also deal with $1 billion in paper checks that have to be deposited and again, distributed to the proper account. So we just recently completed that procurement. We'll be implementing that over the next couple of years. We've implemented our shared customer portal solution. So we've got a new claims intake portal. We're in the process of implementing the AWS Connect solution. We're in the process of getting our social media communications effort underway. We're introducing a new identity proofing solution that will be frictionless, and somewhere around 90% of the customers will pass through that without having to upload any documents. We'll always keep the option to upload documents for people that can't pass the initial scan. And then obviously the integrated claims management system. We're in the process of finishing the RFP. Actually, it's in the review process right now. It'll be released August 15th. We have until June 30th to complete that procurement and award the contract. Once we award the contract in June 30th of 2025, we'll begin implementation. Again, it depends on the vendor that wins the procurement, but they have implementation timeframes of 3 to 4 years. So by 2028, 2029, we'll have completely modernized EDD.
So in terms of the project, and this was one of my questions last week on the panel discussion, I was wondering if you could talk about about the culture and your communications approach. So this is internal stakeholder communications across the project, employees, stakeholders, and so on. How do you communicate?
So we do a lot of things. Internally, we've set up a SharePoint site with all the latest information on EDD. All of the EDD employees can access that. Anytime they want to know anything about EDDNext, they can look at that. We've got our website with our EDDNext page, so the public can look at that and see what the status is of EDD. We're using social media to reach out to the public. We post things on LinkedIn every week about the changes at EDD. We're talking to employees. I'm talking to a large group Thursday of this week. So I'm going around to each branch, each manager's meeting, doing town halls, talking about the changes that you're going to see at EDDNext. And it's really important because employees have to buy into this. And we need to make their life easier. I've been at the contact centers. I've been at the front counters. I mean, we're dealing with people that are at their most vulnerable. They've lost their job. They're dealing with an illness. They're trying to take care of somebody who's ill, or they've just had a baby and they're trying to figure all that out. So we need to make it easier for EDD employees to provide services to the public. And that's a big thing we look at, and everything we're doing is this going to make your life easier? Because if we roll out new technology and the technology works great, but it's harder for our employees to wait on the public, I mean, we haven't accomplished anything. So, we're weighing all that stuff out. Like I said, we've got a customer experience group that is involved in everything we do. They're involved in every decision, and they're making sure that we keep that approach throughout the project.
So that's something that, talking about human-centered design or user-centered design, customer-centric design. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you're working directly with your stakeholders in your way of using user-centered or customer-centric design.
Yeah, so we have our customer-centric design group involved in every discussion that we have. When we design something, we first run it by the public to see how the public's going to react. We have focus groups that we do that with. We also talk to the advocacy groups and have them take a look at what we're proposing. It's complex because these are large IT projects. And, when you talking to an advocacy group, you need to focus on the things that they're interested in. So we involve them, though, in every discussion. We talk to other departments about how they're doing things throughout the state. Everybody compares EDD to DMV. We talk to DMV all the time. We're using a lot of similar solutions to what DMV is doing, including AWS Connect. So, the user-centric design is integral to everything that we're doing at EDD.
So you just mentioned DMV, and one of my questions was going to be, how are you working with other departments? How are you collaborating, sharing best practices? All eyes are on this project. It's the biggest, perhaps one of the most important projects in government right now. There are many other important ones that are happening as well, but how are you working with other departments to collaborate and share best practices as you learn them yourselves, as you have your own lessons learned?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on, we're talking to a number of different departments, but for example, DMV, they implemented AWS Connect before we did. So we got together with their project team, talked to them about the challenges they had during the implementation, talked to them about lessons learned. We're talking to DMV about using their digital driver's license in our ID proofing solution. People don't realize we have over 200 interfaces built into other departments. So we're talking to, Franchise Tax Board. We're talking to DMV. We're talking to State Controller's Office. We're talking to corrections to get a list of incarcerated individuals. So, there's a lot of interaction with other state departments, a lot of planning with other state departments.
Last week on Tuesday, you mentioned the Office of Data and Innovation is one of your key partners. Perhaps you could talk about the work that you're doing with them.
Sure. They're really helping us on, so we have a large language access effort underway. We rolled out 8 languages in our shared customer portal. I think we offer 100 different languages that we'll use translators for on our integrated contact center. We're trying to simplify the questions that we ask the public, so we're working with ODI on that. We're trying to reduce the number of questions dramatically. So working with ODI on that. And then, of course, we talk to ODI about, artificial intelligence, which is the big topic that everybody talks about today. So we're actively involved with ODI. We really appreciate their help. They do a great job.
Well, since you brought it up, Gen AI was my next question. There's been a lot of talk about Gen AI. Obviously, there are 40 some odd bills pending through the legislature. Our association's tracking them. And I was wondering if you could talk about what are your plans to use Gen AI, like maybe in call centers? And, I'll just be frank, are any of these AI related efforts going to impact existing jobs?
Sure. So none of our AI efforts are going to result in any job loss. Let's be clear up front. They're going to make us more efficient. Realistically, AI is going to be a part of every solution over the next 3 to 5 years. So it will be an integral part of what we do, but it will help to make us more efficient. For example, if we're looking at something and there's a complex analysis that needs to be done, or there's complex research that needs to be done, AI can do it instantly, give you the results, the pros, the cons. AI is not going to make the decision for us. We will make the decision. Let's be clear on that. But it can give us guidance. It can give us facts. It can give us background. So AI is going to be part of things in the future. It's just making sure it's responsible AI.
Thank you. So, moving on, our audience, we have a lot of technology companies that follow what we do here. How do they engage with the project? How do they engage with the department and the project specifically in terms of, maybe they have some technology they want to share or, show you their line of products? How do they connect with you?
So we have an open door. We've met with hundreds of vendors in the last 2 years. I probably meet with 3 or 4 vendors every week. Now, obviously not talking about ICMS because that's an active procurement. But I tell the vendors all the time, get involved with EDD. We do vendor days once a month, and we do vendor days with the leadership team. People pay attention during vendor days. That's where we get our best ideas about things, new technologies that could potentially help us to do our job. So we've had a real big outreach to the vendor community. The other thing is on ICMS, for example, we released a request for information, an RFI. We got 18 firms that responded. We got great information in that RFI. We released a pre-solicitation. We got great information on that pre-solicitation. People thanked us for including some of the comments from the RFI in the RFP that they saw during the pre-solicitation. So I am all about talking to the vendor community and getting their feedback.
Well, Ron, any final thoughts or messages you want to leave with our audience?
Yeah, just that, EDD manages some of the most important benefit programs out there: unemployment insurance, disability insurance, paid family leave. And we help customers when they're at their most vulnerable. And so we're doing everything we can to improve that process, to improve that experience. We want it to be easy for the public to interact with EDD. We want it to be easy for our employees to provide benefits to the public. So EDDNext is really an effort to modernize the way we do things with those goals in mind.
Well, Ron Hughes, Deputy Director for EDD, Project Director for EDDNext, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our audience today and help us better understand all the work that you're doing at EDD. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Take care.